Hi everybody. Hey, this is my first YouTube discussion video. Now, for those of you who've been following me along the past several years, I do these discussion videos regularly on my Facebook and my website vlog. But this is my first time venturing out into YouTube. So, first and foremost, I'll probably be making a lot of software technical mistakes because I don't understand the software behind Facebook even after all these years in YouTube. It's kind of like a learning process for me, and I really don't put in enough time and effort. I don't think I get the right kind of. I got to search YouTube videos just to see how to do YouTube, so it's not very viable for me. I don't have a personal Facebook page, so I'm not really hip on all this social media, I guess is what I'm getting at. I use YouTube just to watch music videos or anything of a technical nature, regarding electronics or something. I don't watch it for martial arts or anything like that. I never have, except for today. In a way, I saw, or once in a while somebody will send me a link. They'll want me to watch this clip for instructional purposes, and they want me to say, hey, what did the guy do right, what did the guy do wrong? But for the most part, I'm not hip on all of this, so I apologize in advance for any kind of technical glitches that I may make in all of that jazz. So today, when I was doing this, trying to learn this YouTube channel, along the left side, or the right side I should say, was like recommended channels or something, recommended videos for you or something it said. So I clicked on a couple of them. They were wrestler guys, catch wrestler guys. They looked in shape, seemed good. What I want to discuss though, and this pertains to not just wrestling but any martial arts style out there, or boxing, you name it. Remember how, like the old time karate guys, they would show something like this, right? And then the guy would freeze, and then the demonstrator would do 4 or 5 moves on the frozen guy, and then you'd say, well, he's not going to just leave his arm out there like that in real life. And you would be correct to say that, I mean, I hate to paint with a broad brush, but generally speaking, nobody does that. Well, the same phenomenon happens in the grappling world, and I saw it on a couple of videos today. What I mean by that is this. You have a demonstrator who's going to go through 3 or 4 or whatever the amount of moves and or adjustments on his holder technique to get it to work. Meanwhile, the opponent is just laying there, okay, not moving, totally locked up in like suspended animation. Well, I understand. I've been doing this for 40 years, so I understand how it is to demo a hold. You don't obviously want the guy to go live when you're trying to show a hold. But by the same token, you need to realize, and this has to be intrinsic with you, that there's going to be adjustments and countermeasures done by the opponent unless he is an utter and total fish or unconscious or what have you. You want to take a physics approach, the path of least resistance. If you have to do a lot of involved motions, it's not going to be a high priority move. It'll look cool. Oh, and it'll work once you get it on the guy, but it takes way too much effort, and it's going to be a low percentage move, okay? Now, I'm not opposed to you learning moves like that. I mean, it just adds it to your repertoire, but you have to have a pecking order here. And holds like that have to go near the bottom of the pecking order. And I'll get into the pecking order in a little bit, but always remember that. Watch with a critical eye when you see somebody do this, okay? Normally, when I'm actually doing it for real, I know that the guy is moving. I want him to move, okay? I want to get every move that he makes, get him closer to being nailed, okay, into the corner where it's a point of no return for him, all right? So I may start out making him think I'm going for one move, but in essence, that isn't even the move I'm going to go for. I'm going to rip him and push him and strike him and do things to get a even more sufficient and effective finishing move, okay? And that's the key. But always remember this key thing, the path of least resistance. Don't pass up a chance to strike, to gouge, to rip, or whatever. Now, I know a lot of you now are into this sport thing, okay? There was no sport catch wrestling when I was a kid growing up. It didn't exist. There was the fake pro wrestling, and then maybe it was judo. And this stuff you can't do in judo. So I learned this, for me, for the most important reason, self-defense, live or die. And I'm telling you now, don't fall into this rut where you think because you can pull the move off on a compliant person in a gym under strict rules that it's going to be you know, carte blanche on anybody. It's not. We're going to get to that in a second. The second thing that I saw, and this is probably even a little bit more disturbing, is when they tie up both of their arms, the demonstrator will tie up his hands, his own personal hands, trying to get a hold, like if you're grabbing underneath the guy's body to try to get some sort of a pressure lock or a choke, and yet the guy on top is completely free. His hands are available. He's going to hit you. He's going to bite you. He's going to eye gouge. He's going to rip. He's going to strike your groin, your throat, your hair, you name it. Okay. He's going to use his knees against you. He's going to use his legs to get you and get you off. These aren't moves that you really want to use. Okay. We're not even going to get into the street reason why yet. We'll get to that later. But even in a sporting event, unless the rules are just so strict that you can't use your legs to head scissor a guy, you're going to get the guy off of you. And this guy is going to be in a lot of trouble. So the moves, again, will more than likely work if all the conditions are met. But every step of the way, you have to ask yourself, am I vulnerable here when I'm doing it as a demonstrator? What is my vulnerability? Okay? And it seems that sometimes people get so wrapped up in wanting to show you something cool that they start to think that they're impregnable, okay? That there's nothing that's going to get through to them. The science of boxing, which has been around a long time, is really technically a counter punch sport, because every time you throw a punch, whether it lands or not, you are actually vulnerable. Once you get out of your turtle shell, you're vulnerable to something. And the key is you got to reach your point before that person reaches his point. And that's so true in grappling arts. You know, you will be vulnerable. Don't make yourself more vulnerable by tying up your hands and basically giving this guy free rein. Okay, the third point I want to show. One guy was talking about, you know, again, he tied up both of his hands to try to create some pressure. Now, he was a guy probably built like me, and once again, he had to do it in stages. Meanwhile, the opponent was just not resisting. But the key here is the opponent and him they were about the same body size, okay, the same body weight. The first thing that struck me is that he was talking about carrying weight, but yet he had his weight on his knees. The demonstrator, he was not making himself as heavy as possible. So that's strike one. For you lighter guys, please, you do have to learn how to make somebody carry your weight. However, when there's a big weight discrepancy, these moves are just not going to work for you, okay? You don't have the mass to make them work. And that goes for a guy like me. A guy my size against guys, I've wrestled brutes that were over 300 pounds. To pressurize them, it's not going to happen, okay? It's too low percentage. I'll use my other attributes, okay? I'll use my speed, my quickness, my knowledge of different holds to really conflate anything that he's going to try to do. And that's what you little, smaller guys against a larger guy has to start using. Don't try to go against a negative, which is the weight disadvantage. He's going to have that. That's a plus on his side. Use countermeasures. Use your speed, your quickness, and what have you. All right. So, if your job is to become an instructor, yeah, learn these moves, put them in the back of your head, save them for a rainy day, but don't make them a priority. Don't spend an awful lot of time on them. All right. Now, I break moves down into several different categories. One is like demonstration moves, like let's just show off, okay? Let's just show something fancy, make people laugh, and make them feel the effectiveness of what a hold can be, but in reality, it's probably not going to ever happen, all right? Other martial art guys have done this. I've done seminars with some great martial artists, and they once in a while will show these fantastic moves that they know that they would never use and haven't used in any kind of reality kind of situation, because it's more for show. And then you have your gym moves, what I call gym moves, that are only going to really work in a gym under certain situations. Here's a classic case in point. Let's say you're an advanced guy, you're a sambo catch wrestler, you're really good at your leg locks. You go to a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school or any other school that forbids leg locks at an entry level. I don't want to single on anyone, but BJJ is very popular. you get this guy and you have him. It's just leg lock city, and you get stopped. The instructor says, nope, can't use leg locks. You got to be at a certain belt level. Well, okay, that's kind of taking you out of your element now. All right, you're not really able to do what you really like to do best. So now you got to kind of do a move you normally wouldn't do, and that's kind of like a gym move. All right, I wouldn't normally do this, but under these circumstances, I have to do it. Okay. So you have that. Then you have your sport moves. Now, again, sport has a lot of subsets because a lot of these different organizations now they're coming out with they're all making up their own rules. So you got to know what's allowed, what's not allowed, and therefore, if you stay with one organization, okay, you know that okay, I'm only allowed to. These are the rules I have to follow all the time. So now you start to adjust your training and you adjust your arsenal to fit into those sporting world, okay? And that's fine. And then you have now there's probably others as well, but then I categorize the last one as your reality, your street fight, where anything goes, everything, weapons, you name it, guns, knives, biting, eyeballs, you name it, everything goes. And that opens up the most involved type of training, and it's only for a small section of guys. A lot of people would not want to enter into this kind of world because it's very painful emotionally, psychologically, physically. Because especially if you have some sort of a background in something, you may be an accomplished grappler or a striker or weapons guy, then all of a sudden you're finding out, wow, I did not realize I had that many holes in my game, because you were living in a little world where everybody followed along. It's like speaking English to each other, and then all of a sudden you go to another foreign country, or you go to a section of Chicago, let's say where I lived. They don't speak English in there. Wow, what's being said? What's going on here? So you have to be prepared for that. And that's where the majority of techniques fall apart, is in the reality world, okay? I've been a big advocate of not going to the ground, generally speaking. Now we're going to paint with a larger brush, of not going to the ground in a street scenario, okay? For many reasons: multiple assailants, weapons, landscape, objects, and so on and so forth. So you have to alter your training for that. But if you are a strict grappler, okay, let's say you don't have any striking skills, you're just strictly do your grappling or your submissions. In a street scenario, you have to be prepared for what I mentioned earlier about tying up your hands and about being too complicated. But also you have to factor in the weather. You try to wrestle out here when there's 10 or 15 inches of snow out, or there's rain, or there's pebbles, or there's broken glass, or you're on a bus, or you're on a confined area. You are going to find out very quickly that you need the simplest, most direct approach to finishing anyone, okay? Or even if you just don't have the skills to finish, you're going to need the simplest, most direct approach to protect yourself, okay? So that's where everything that's complex, anything that's multi-staged, okay, you really have to start to abandon that. So my suggestion to everyone here is this: watch everything now with a keen eye. See how many steps did it take the demonstrator to get this move, and more importantly, watch the opponent. Is he completely compliant through all of this? All right, that's a big red flag. Now again, more advanced people will see that and they can appreciate what the demonstrator's doing. Oh yes, he has knowledge of that hold, but we all say, well, I hope he doesn't think he's going to pull that one off, against a resistant opponent. The next thing you need to do is, if you're attempting to replicate that move anyway, ask yourself, where's my vulnerabilities? Can I get hit, bit, struck, or submitted in another way? My mantra has been, and I've been doing this and saying this since the 80s, use your whole body as a weapon, use his whole body as a target. And I don't see that in many other styles here or there. You get that tunnel vision. So don't get that tunnel vision. Don't tie yourself up, and make sure above all that you're thinking outside of the box. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and remember that your opponent is going to use the shortest distance he can to counter you. So you can have all the fun you want doing the complex stuff. The simple approach is probably what's going to end up nailing you. It's Occam's razor, okay? Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Talk to you another time.